have this panel here. I think most of you know who these guys are. But I am going to introduce you to them. So Steve Milo, which we heard from earlier, he's really subtle with his opinions, so don't ask him anything hard. Ben Edwards, who is with Newman Daily, he also has Weatherby Consulting and is handling the majority of the acquisitions in the space right now. And Lino Maldonado, he is the Vice President at Wyndham Vacation Rentals. I think most of you know Lino in this market. Paul Wohlford, he's the Vice President of Resort Collection in Panama City, based in Panama City, but growing. And Jason Sprenkle is the CEO of 360 Blue. So this is what we're going to do. I'm going to ask them some questions, but I really want you guys to ask some questions too. So I'm going to give you my phone number. If you don't want to raise your hand, you can text me the questions. But that's it. Then you can lose my phone number. So it's 251-455-4994. 455-4994. So if you know that you've got some questions for these guys, then you can text them over here if you don't want to ask. So one of the things, part of the reason that all of you are here is about what's going on in Orange Beach right now. Orange Beach decided to put a moratorium on new short-term rental licenses or vacation rental licenses that are not beachfront in certain areas. And they're still working through this right now, but it was kind of a surprise for a lot of people in this room. And all of you have been working with legislative issues in your local areas. Jason, I'm going to start with you. How do you work with the city council right now who's deciding to do some random, bizarre, maybe stupid legislation that's out there right now? What do you do?
Slow and painful is the short answer. We've been pretty anti-political. Lazy is probably the fair answer when it comes to all the emails that we've been getting, particularly in Florida. We're over in Destin. But there's been a pretty strong barrage if you need to get involved for the last year. It's coming to your neighborhood. And quite honestly, I naively believed that it was going to come to everybody else's neighborhood, but it really wouldn't come to ours. So we really didn't do anything, and it hit dead center in Destin for us this year. They moved pretty quickly and pretty aggressively to cut occupancy significantly. And the real answer is we've just got to try to participate, throw ourselves in front of the train. We started a group, city council appointed a task force, and we've really just tried to be, congenial and a listener. As you'd imagine, the people who are opposed to short-term rentals, and particularly opposed to occupancy, trash and noise and all the things that go along with it, are pretty passionate people, and they're pretty aggressively opposed to it. So we really tried to just sound like we're listening and we're making improvements. And then I think the best thing we've done is we pulled together as an industry, all the way from Lino over in Orange Beach, over in Panama City. We've gotten together and we said, we've got to have to clean ourselves up and police ourselves a little bit. And so we worked really proactively to try to fix some things instead of just giving lip service to it. And I think that's what's going to protect us in the long run, is if we fix the things that we know are wrong. But a lot of it's just putting up with the discussions and trying to get through them and trying to keep them from doing irrational things, which is not always easy.
Yeah. Paul, in Panama City Beach, my gosh, I mean, you guys have gone all over the map with legislation.
We're good at that. We're all over the map every day.
So how do you guys handle it?
Well, we took a little bit different approach. We work with our city folks and our TDCs and our county, and we've been doing it for years to educate them on why we need what we need. I have lunch with the mayor once a month. We help get the mayor elected. We do things like employee forums as to which candidate you should vote for and why we're voting for this candidate. And we do that with chambers and TDCs, and it's about education, because these guys don't know what they don't know. And just because they're elected, they think they may know our industry, but they don't. They've stayed in the hotel, and that means they know the VR space, and that's not true. So we work tirelessly on helping the political figures in our town understand what we need and why we need it. The county commission, friends of the family, the mayor, the city council, the TDC, any potentially elected official or elected official we're spending time with on the ground, so that when it comes time for issues to be put on the table, they will ask us our opinion and our thoughts, and we'll give it to them. And we've had some pretty good success over the past couple of years as to why we need what we need. We talk to the police chief, and I mean, it's an everyday occurrence, and it's a lot of work. It's tireless, but you have to do it, and we have to do it to educate these guys on our business and our industry.
Lino, do you think that we're going to see this lessening anytime soon, or do you think this is the trend for a while to see more regulations come up?
No, I think it's definitely a trend, but I think you're going to see some sensibility come back into the ball game. Some of the city councils that they are not connected, as Paul said. They don't understand the industry, and they're very dangerous because they do listen to the vocal minorities in some cases. The obvious problems are there right in front of us. We've got noise problems in some residential communities. People are on vacation. They generally don't care as much about that their neighbors live there. It's not a vacation rental, property. The trash pickup, the little things that, as Jason mentioned as well, that we know are a problem for us. We got to do a better job at that. But if you look at what's happened in Destin, we literally, one of the worst problems we've had is on Holiday Isle, where the city council passed an ordinance that only nuclear families could stay in a vacation rental unit. So if you're the group that lives under your roof, wherever you're from, are the only people who can come stay and rent a place under the roof at in Destin. So if your neighbor next door has a residential unit, all of his friends and family can come for Thanksgiving. But if you're an owner of a vacation rental unit right next door, the only people that can use your place for Thanksgiving are the people who live together at home in Kentucky or wherever else they are. That's how irrational some of this stuff has really gotten. And so I think it's incumbent on all of us to not only do a better job with what we can solve for ourselves, but we have to get out there and educate every one of our associates, and the folks that vote have to know who to go vote for. Because the city councils, the county commissioners, they'll listen to the people, their voting blocks, but they will not get a word. They'll not let a absentee owner who just has a big investment in the area. They're not going to listen to a word that person says. So it's our employees who really need these jobs have to get out there and be educated and have their voices heard. They'll listen to them.
You guys have also been working to get some new candidates in. Is that correct? Is there a political action, a PAC?
There is, and actually Jason's been a really big help with getting that stuff about it. We did a fundraiser for a new mayor in Destin, and it was really kind of cool to see the industry come together. I think for the very first time in a long time, we have a great way of coming together in adversities, and challenging times, but we don't do nearly enough proactively to accommodate the industry that we're in. And we did a big fundraiser. We started a PAC, and we got to make sure that the people that have got the most rational thought process as to our industry are the ones making the decisions for us. Otherwise, it's going to be, we're going to continue to see some negative trends.
If this thing passes in Orange Beach, you and I talked about this a little, what do you think the immediate impact will be to Orange Beach?
Well, just the bed tax collections themselves are a huge negative impact. I think the real estate, play. There's a lot of people that own second homes and investment homes, and they make those buying decisions based on the revenue that they can achieve to help offset some of those costs. So I think you could have a really big negative impact on some real estate transactions as well. I think the job market, every single person who is in this industry, there's a lot of them that don't understand that what they do for a living is directly tied. These are your fishing captains. These are your people that work at gas stations. These are the people that work in grocery stores that are all based on, transient rental revenues. So the negative impact is way downstream. And this is also part of the impact that many of our elected officials just don't see. So to Paul's point, showing them the numbers, I think is imperative to us, charging ahead with our own future.
Ben, you guys have been working on this in Destin too. I know Tiffany's been really involved, your wife, in this process. Have you been following what's going on Orange Beach lately?
Yeah, so we followed it. I followed it a little bit by proxy. I feel like Destin's home, but I just don't get to spend enough time there. So I've been traveling a lot. One thing that has really taken my attention is the business that I own in California. We've been experiencing issues recently, and our chamber president came out against vacation rentals. It was me supporting the short-term rental ban in Pacific Grove, and when we met with him, his rationale is because we're putting the older B&Bs and Inns out of business, and he's trying to do his best to help those guys. So, I mean, you talk about the pendulum maybe coming back the other way. Maybe it will, maybe it won't, but I think the common theme here in Orange Beach, Destin, or Pacific Grove, California, is we don't need to be as lazy as we have been. We've kind of been fat and happy with this stuff, and it's time to change and actually do some things differently.
Well, you were president of the VRMA. One of your big initiatives was adding in some resources to help in this. If you're in Orange Beach right now, how can you tap into that at the VRMA?
You know, so to your point, a few years back, you know, I think the VRMA was kind of swerving all over the road, right, with regards to what they did for the overall membership. And there's two things that I think the industry really, the association should do for the industry, and that's one, to educate, two, to provide some advocacy help. And so we committed a full-time director of government relations, advocacy, and Greg Holcomb. Greg has a lot of tools at his disposal, one of which is pretty cool insofar as if you guys in Orange Beach aggregate an email database, Greg can load that into his system and also attach all the council people and the stakeholders associated with making that decision. And then he fires that email out to 10, 20, 30, 40,000 people with the message, how to respond. So when you respond via email, it will hit those 5 or 6 council members. If you really want to make an impact, tie their phones and their email up for about a week, and then they'll want to meet. They'll want to do something a little bit differently, and that's one thing. And that's a granular point, but to me, that's helped us a lot. One of the biggest tools that we've seen the VRMA help with.
Yeah, and being able to do that, what Paul said, like engage your employees that live there.
That's a great idea.
You know, is a really great idea to go along with that. Steve, my gosh, where your home base, you started out in a regulatory award, didn't you?
Yeah, I've been involved in this issue since 2006. I can't say that I'm overly optimistic at the local level. I mean, I hate to kind of rain on everyone's parade. I think you can get a few victories at the local level, but there's going to be a real estate cycle called the anti-growth crowd, and that's going to start to happen over the next 5 to 10 years. And as more and more of those politicians get elected, you're going to see more and more regulation at the local level. The way and the place that we have to go is at the state. We have to go to the state. And if you're not a member of the Florida Vacation Rental Manager or the VRMA, you need to be part of that, because it's state preemption. It's states like Arizona, it's states like Florida that have preemptive language that prevents local government from banning vacation rentals. They cannot do in Florida what they are trying to do in Alabama. And Tennessee is in the process of trying to get state preemption. It's Texas, that in hindsight, the strategy of trying to fight tooth and nail in Austin was a mistake. They should have gone right to the State House. So it's going to take leaders, associations, large companies working with vendors on a strategy of picking 3 or 4 states at a time and trying to get preemptive language. And this is where I think we'll have success and protect our industry.
With the, is it the Stoops bill? Is that what it's called in Florida right now? Is it going to pass? Do you think? I mean,
no, it's not going to pass this year because it's an election year. Well, we're heading into an election year. So in an election year, typically controversial bills do not pass, particularly for a Republican majority that's nervous about re-election. They're not going to pass a bill that local governments, the League of Cities is very much against altering the preemption right now. So you're going to have to do things on a non-election year. And right now, the dynamics are not good to get something passed. So you know, the most we can hope for is defending what we have in Florida. Other states like Tennessee, you could probably get something passed. Alabama probably could get something passed. I mean, I'm not saying this is a Democratic or Republican issue, but in general, it's a property rights issue. And in general, the more conservative politicians, and they can also be Democrats, are going to lean towards a property rights bill. And in Alabama, you have one of the most conservative political bases possible. You need to go to the state house. You need to hire a lobbyist, and you need to get up there, and you need to start to work with them. And you got to do it outside of session. Same thing in Georgia. The southern states are going to have much more success rallying to get state preemption. Preemption doesn't mean that local governments can't do certain things to regulate. They just can't zone us out.
In Orange Beach, one of the city council members, Jeff Boyd, is actually running for state senate, and he's one of the ones who's leading the charge in creating this ban on new licenses for vacation rentals. To the point about electing the right people, I think that, to your point, it's really important to start looking at who we're sending to the state if we're going to hope the state is going to bail us out with a preemption bill. Do you guys have any questions for them about regulations? I know a lot of you have been at the city council. Steve, right?
Isn't it maybe, is any part of like an issue at Orange Beach? Because the number of permanent residents that have the right to vote seems to me to be so small that maybe 2,000 people could carry an election.
That's why you go to the state. That happens in a lot of locations. I think when our mayor in Destin was elected, we had about an 8% voter turnout, and I think he raised $2 grand. So you're absolutely right. It's money helps. You get behind the right candidate helps, but getting the people who work and live in these communities at the ballot box, that's what really counts.
Now, we're the same in Panama City Beach. Our mayor was elected, it was less than 3,000 votes. And the beach part of Panama City, even though it's 26 miles of beach, you've got a tiny little area that is actually Panama City Beach. So it's door-to-door campaigns, it's educating them because they don't want tourism, because they like their own little beach to themselves, but they don't understand the tax implications of not having those temporary tax dollars from the tourists come in. So you got to educate them and then get the right guy in front of them.
Is that not a temporary something in Orange Beach? I mean, Kevin just saying, I want to hold off until we can get a better idea of what the road's going to look like. I mean, I don't
There's a legislative session on, or there's a, whatever. There's
council member.
there is a, it's not a meeting, they're having a planning meeting
Planning
Chris-
Commission meeting.
on the 12th, on February 12th. Glenn?
Good news, and I'd like to thank Amy, your article after the council meeting was very instrumental in working. I think there's strong evidence that the process is working. Cooler heads have prevailed, and there's been some good progress there. Planning Commission meeting is on Monday, I think the 12th. So they'll talk about some things, but it looks like they're moving in the direction of an overlay district. Initially, it was everything north of Freedom Beach Boulevard was going to be subject to the new zoning. They've rethought that, so it's everything north of Freedom Beach Boulevard. So there's overlay all the way across Freedom Beach Boulevard and some other select areas north of there as well. So.
Yeah, Tony didn't like the article. I don't know who was at the meeting with me.
I was the one that forwarded it.
Any other questions about legislation or regulatory issues for these guys? So I'm going to move on to the OTA world right now. I know I feel like we can do hammer it up. But looking at a mix of revenue, direct bookings to what you're getting from the channels, is there a level that you feel like is too high to be getting from the channels, from other channels? Like you're at 40%, right? Is what you said.
Yeah, so this is really an interesting topic because I would say being in 19 markets, we have a kind of a chance to take a look at all the data. If you are in a market where there's a high amount of repeat guests that come back every year, you're not going to need anywhere near the amount of OTAs that other markets are. So if you've got guests who are coming back every year, and you have a good sales team, and you've got that sales team outbounding, and you've got emails going out to those guests, reminding them to rebook, and maybe you give them, $100 off or $50 off if they rebook before they leave. you're in good shape. So, you know, someone in Outer Banks says, oh, well, we don't really need VRBO. Well, that's great. I mean, fantastic. Where you're going to need the OTAs is, one, if you're growing. If you're growing your inventory, you need new customers because they don't have any existing customers. And two, if you're in a market where there's a lot of churn, where customers have options of choices of where they can go. If, you know, Atlanta is your feeder market and they can go to Hilton Head, or they can go to Northeast Florida, or they can go to Siesta Key, or they can go to anywhere near, you know, on the Panhandle, then you have, you know, then you have more work cut out. So, you know, part of it is really assessing your market. The other thing is, you should do everything possible to let the consumer know that the best price, the very best price, is always booking direct. Now, I understand if you're with an OTA, you don't do that in the middle of the communication with the OTA so that the guest doesn't cancel and then tries to rebook. But once they're booked with you, and once they're in your funnel, and once they're enjoying their vacation, you and your staff should do everything possible to rebook the guest and essentially use the OTAs for what they're good at, which is acquiring customers. And then what you should be good at is keeping the customers.
I don't know if I should have passed that to him or kept it from him. I don't know. You know, I think there's OTAs are important. Strategic partners are important, but I think it's very personal to your particular business, your particular market location, and what your business is set up to do. Hyperly competitive markets, sometimes you might have the need or think you have the need to go heavy OTA. One example for me was a company we bought in Orlando, one of the most challenging, competitive markets in the country. 95% OTA when we bought it, and in less than 2 years, we've gotten that down to almost only 45%. What is the right mix? There's not a right answer for that. It's really personal. It's up to you and what your business model really looks like. I think guest acquisition is critical. I think new guest acquisition is going to be tough to compete with billion-dollar marketing budgets, which some of these have. So, but I think I do agree completely with Steve on the point of once you have bought that customer one time by distributing through a third party, you got to do all of the black and white things to keep them in your funnel from that point forward. That's really the critical piece, not what your percentage is on any given new guest acquisition initiative.
Well, I think we have done a great job of confusing our customers. We have done a tremendous job of confusing our customers. They have so many avenues to book. We have a hotel, a condo property in Panama City Beach, where on Expedia alone, you can book 60 different ways in one building. And so they're confused. And the OTAs have provided a lot of guests with a sense of stability. And we need them as strategic partners, like Lino said. Once you get them, we have different check-in packets for OTA guests versus our guests, and the OTA check-in packets have book direct and get. We have rewards cards that these guys get and these guys don't. We differentiate what happens when they walk in that front door. But a lot of it's our own doing by confusing how we offer and how we talk to our customers, and have done that in the past.
Yeah, I think it's been a scary time for the group of folks, at least in our community we've met with, and we've done a pretty good job of kind of talking amongst each other to try to figure it out. But it seems like everybody's kind of been asking that same critical question, and it felt to me like it was hard to stay in the middle. What's the perfect mix? It seemed like we kind of floated in the middle real comfortably, kind of like we did on the political side, without having to make that decision. And at least over in Destin and on 38, VRBO was a pretty dominant factor. Booking.com, the other sources out there just haven't driven that much business, at least for us. And it felt like HomeAway came in and said you can't really hang out in the middle. You either have to go left or you have to go right. You have to either kind of commit to run all your business through us, in which case you'll rise up on the rankings, or you have to kind of do your own thing, in which case you'll fall dramatically. And so I think most of the folks I've talked to that felt like they had a solid brand weren't willing to kind of commit and go all in. So they kept doing what they were doing, and they saw a pretty precipitous or severe drop in their listings or referrals from Verbo. We certainly did, a huge drop. And it was nice because it kind of didn't allow us to sit in the middle. It forced us to say, we'll take that money and go all in on branding. And so where you see us focused on our efforts is exactly what they say. We're tripling our marketing staff, and we're really trying to we just completed an acquisition. We're trying to get big enough to where our brand can stand on its feet and we can deliver that level of customer service that you don't get through the OTAs. Where I see a scary spot for the market is the smaller companies or the companies who just took the easy way and went all in and said we want to rank high in the rankings, and they had a pretty good revenue year last year. We saw an awful lot of owners that said, hey, I was with this smaller company, or my friends with a smaller company, and we did great last year. I think that chicken's going to come home to roost, and I think it'll take a full cycle before you see those companies really take a hit to their owner's bottom line. But if you're scraping 20% off the top with these OTAs, and the person next to you is not taking a 20% cut off the top because they're booking direct, at the end of the year, the revenue that you deliver to your owners is going to be different enough for those owners to take notice. And I also think final kind of tricky part of it is owners are starting to understand this dynamic, and an awful lot of us are starting to try to teach our owners that the OTAs are different than they used to. The pressure used to be on us to list on all the OTAs and how many sites are you on, and are you on Verbo, and at least from our end, we're feeling that negative pressure, like, oh, we heard bad things, why are you out there? And so I think it'll be a real interesting time. I think it's incumbent upon us to better understand these OTA channels. I think I've got on my checklist to go home and try to get my knowledge up to where Steve's is on the other levels of OTAs and get our teams really focused on what our other options are, because I do think it's kind of a scary, tumultuous time for us all.
When you, Jason, don't give it up yet. You just purchased St. Joe. Congratulations. Big purchase over there. When you were calling the owners to let them know that you were taking them over, that you were going to be entering you. One of the things you and I talked about was that the conversation about HomeAway had changed. That, you know, before owners are like, are we going to be listed and stuff like that, but you had some interesting conversations with homeowners pushing back a little bit on that. Did you not?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what I was hitting on there on the end. It seemed like the conversation now, and we knew we were headed into an acquisition, so we built up the conversation with our owners that bigger is better. Now, obviously, your messaging serves your purpose, but I really do believe, having a brand that can drive less bookings through the OTAs it sounds obvious, but it obviously can put more money in your owner's pockets if you can do it. I think I'd like to be one of what I call kind of the escapees who have a strong enough brand or just a big enough chest to go and pull completely off. But I've seen very few companies that have just cut the cord. I know that there's markets that have been pretty successful in staying off the OTAs. Ours hasn't, so I think we're all kind of getting together and looking at each other and saying, hey, it's the time to try to keep our customers and our money where we are. But the owners are hearing that. They're hearing it from several different companies that they're talking to. And so, we are seeing pushback. But our message back to them is, hey, it's expensive to be on the OTAs. We haven't cut the cord yet because we want to make sure we drive bookings to you. So you got to do the math on the units where you're just not producing enough revenue. It's better to have some revenue and pay a 20% fee. It's dangerous to pay that 20% fee on a unit where you can deliver full income because the guy next to you might be able to do without the 20% fee. So I do think a lot of the conversations are going to be how we handle our owners. And final point on that, you got to check your contracts. Who's paying for marketing, and do the owners understand what they're getting and how dependent upon the OTAs are you, and how those fees break down, I think are going to be an issue this year.
Talking about scaling a little bit, you guys have all been involved in scaling operations and growing them, moving into multiple markets. I guess I'll start with Steve on this. That you're on your 17th acquisition, is that correct? 19, I'm sorry. Where are you finding areas that scale really easily as you grow?
This is interesting. So it's interesting because it depends on where you think the industry will evolve. And a lot of you live here, so it's hard to change where you're at. But the places that we've had the most success entering are ones with limited booking rules and are more nightly markets. Those are just fundamentally easier places to manage, and they're easier places to get a consumer book. Now, we all think it's normal, perfectly normal, for someone to arrive on a Saturday and depart on a Saturday. And we think it's perfectly normal for the consumer to understand that. Once you start to get outside of people that have booked for you for years, they don't understand that. they don't understand why you mean I can't arrive on a Thursday? I can't arrive on a Wednesday? What? Saturday's Saturday. That doesn't work for my, my work or my kids' activities. So it's really kind of a strange situation. So in markets where there's less booking rules, I think there's more elasticity for growing demand. And some of that is there's areas like Hawaii where, of course, you wouldn't have a Saturday arrive because you just want people to arrive whenever they can and they hop around in islands and things like that. There's other places like Rios in New Mexico where they're happy to get people whatever day they arrive because it's a bit of a car ride to get there. So, but every market's a little different. The thing about expansion, the thing about looking at areas is how, in my opinion, how rigid are the booking rules? How much can you get your owners to buy into liberalizing the booking rules, particularly in the shoulder season, which I think is the biggest opportunity for everybody in this room? And can you change the mindset of your owners? And that's really what you want to do if you want to pick up those shoulder seasons. And when we look at markets, I mean, we're looking at the market. So yes, we look at the company, but we're also looking at the market.
Ben, you've been working on a lot of these acquisitions too, and you know what the companies that are expanding are looking for in a company. What are they looking for from in a company to buy that they can actually get put into their operation and scale?
That's a good question. So the transaction process, the M&A marketplace is not really that easy, right? So what happens with us is we have a seller that generally comes to us because they need help positioning their business for sale, and I think we do a number of things well. But one thing I think we do exceptionally well is pairing up sellers with buyers. Culturally, we've done a good job pairing people up. Now, during that process, we take a seller's information and put it into an offering memorandum, and we try to tell the story about the business. In certain cases, we've told different stories to different people because a particular story may resonate with you differently than it does with Steve or anyone else. That being said, there's a lot of opportunity in a business combination. Number one is probably accounting. Two businesses that have an accounting department. These guys have an accounting department. With cloud-based PMSs nowadays, you can roll that up. Marketing's another great opportunity to roll some things up. And in certain cases, if you're going to buy a business in a like kind of marketplace, there may be some reservations that can be taken from the acquiring company and things of that nature. So we really try to focus in on making our seller's business the most attractive it can be, and that's helping that buyer bring the most money to the bottom line. So our stories are differentiated, and we try to highlight the attributes in that process.
That brings me to I'm just going to ask him about this really quickly because he buys. So we've actually seen you pick some up in the past. One notable one in the room right now. What do you look for what do you guys look for in a company when you're purchasing right now that you can scale?
People. I mean, Ben hit it. I think Steve hit some good points as well. Ultimately, it's got to be compatible to the way you do business. And I know Steve and I differ a little bit on this based on a panel we were on a couple months ago. But we're not going to buy a company and then destroy it to put it into the systems that we think are the best. We like to go into a market and fully understand the people and make sure that we're compatible with how they do business, how they grew up. We were very fortunate when we came into Alabama. First of all, we came in organically, right down the road. And we loved the market, wanted to learn it, from the ground up. And we started shopping for companies. We could have bought any number of brands that were available at that time. Kaiser and team were the most compatible with who we were, our company culture, which is, to deliver a great experience. That's not something we, A, could train, and B, had to with that particular group. From there, it gets a little more chaotic to add the pieces together. At one point in our life, just a few short years ago, we had 23 different property management systems. that we were operating on because we had grown up by acquisition. It was very difficult, very challenging. You think about everything from product distribution to accounting to tax to you name it. It was tough. And so we have been, we slowed down on the acquisition side and sped up the consolidation of systems and software side to get ready for our next couple of years. And so I think it's all important, but I think for us it's really culture first, because that's something you cannot artificially create. It's got to be authentic, and I think that's where consumers are really going nowadays, is to authentic experiences. Those can only be delivered through authentic people, and so we like to go that route.
Yeah, Paul, a lot of your growth has been organic too.
Pretty much all of it. Yeah, we've been around about 30 years, and most of our growth, with a few exceptions, has been organic. And but we're stepping out of our comfort zone a little bit, and we're looking at it a little differently because all of our units are in Panama City Beach. Therefore, all of our risk is in Panama City Beach. If a storm comes, we've got all our eggs in one basket. So we came up with a concept, and it really birthed through Opma and some relationship with the on-site guys, to go to another territory, partner with another company that we find compatible. It's a great point, that have our own have similar strategic thinking, similar thoughts, similar methods, and go into markets where we currently aren't, and start a business there or acquire a business there. So we're looking at partnering with another group and then going into other areas and getting into the acquisition model, because the organic model is long and slow and tedious and never ending. And so we're looking that route to try and grow, because I think if we mitigate our risk a little bit by being in one location, partnering with these guys who have a similar demographic as our customers do, but we don't compete for customers. So we're looking at a new model, a new trend to try and go after and acquire some companies this way.
You have a lot of on-site property management too, and I know that you were one of the founders of the On-Site Property Management Association. What advantages do you think you have with having some on-site agreements?
Well, it's that we act like hotels. We act like a hotel. We feel like a hotel. You have a front desk. You have housekeeping. You have security. You have all those things in house. 24-hour access to those things. So we look at it as an advantage in our world, and we promote that to the guests. So when they're buying us, it's more like buying a hotel than buying an Airbnb, obviously, or a VRBO in many cases. So we act and market ourselves and work with our customers like a hotel does, like a traditional hotel does. And we offer all those on-site services that you'd see in a hotel and amenities.
Jason, you're scaling now too, and with your recent acquisition, what are you hoping to gain? What kind of efficiencies are you hoping to gain with your acquisition?
I mean, the ones they mentioned, cut out accounting, cut out marketing, duplication. Obviously, we're trying to grow marketing at the same time, so there's a little bit of an opportunity there. But there's some pretty obvious synergies. If you take a like-minded company in a similar market with identical type properties, you can cut payroll pretty significantly and get some good economies of scale. Our growth really was from a desire to counter this OTA balance in my mind a little bit, and to put us in a position to be a brand that was recognized. I think we were kind of right on the cusp, size-wise, of being able to pull away a little bit and survive with the drop in the OTA referral business. And so for us, it was having critical mass in the neighborhoods that we're in, so that the customer will come in and quite frankly, even the ones who went through the OTA process will feel enough of a presence of us in the community that they'll say, I remember 360 Blue. That was a brand that sticks with me. They seem to be everywhere. So we're doing our best to kind of permeate everything from bicycles to limited signage, but really have people feel like we're part of the community. And acquisition for us was the way to do that. To Steve's point, we talked a little bit before this. I asked him, how can you afford to go into all these markets? I think when HomeAway shifted its path and kind of cut off the communications, to us it put up a huge barrier to entry. We've been looking at going into some other areas, and I think we stepped back a little bit from trying to jump into new markets and decided to look at home for a little while, because I do think it's tougher to jump into a new market if you're a relationship-based, high-touch business, because you can't really buy those relationships through the OTAs anymore. So it's changed a little bit.
I have a question for all. Well, first of all, does anybody have a question? This is a question for each of you, actually. How does a small company compete against you? If you could be beat, who would beat you? What kind of company would beat you?
Yeah, right now, I think the companies that are doing well against us are the ones who are pitching small touch, small company. They're pitching the opposite, which is the same thing we pitched when we were 5, 10, 15, 30 units. We told the story that you don't want to be with a big company. You want to be with someone where you can get a hold of the CEO and you can get a hold of the owners and they know you and you know them. And I think that's an effective pitch. I think it's going to be extraordinarily challenging for that to work out economically with the new scenario. So I'm glad I'm not a tiny company right now, or we're not a tiny company. I think it's a tough market. Quite honestly, I'm glad that the barrier to entry is a lot more difficult now. For those that are already crossed the bridge, I feel bad for those that are starting out. I think it's going to take a real relationship-driven, good, smart business person to find their path.
Paul, how about you?
I think whether you're small or big, it all comes down, we call it the 3 C's. It's cash, care, and communication. If you're driving more money, whether you're small or big, you're taking care of their unit, and you're communicating with them, that's what it comes down to. It boils down to that, no matter if you're as big as these guys are, our 1,000, Jason's, it comes down to those 3 things, in my opinion. So the sell against or the sell for, and how do they beat us, really comes down to money in their pocket and how well we take care of their units. And for us, it comes down to the people we put in front of them, building those relationships. That's everything. We're constantly out there developing that, talking to our owners, what we have to do every day, and we try to build that relationship and then put more money in their pocket, take care of their unit, and communicate with them with rental owner newsletters. We talk to them at least once a month electronically, and that's important to us.
Same question, Lino.
Yeah, I mean,
How do you beat Wyndham?
well, first of all, we're not focused on being the biggest. I mean, in any of our markets, that's.
Of course you not. You are.
No, but well, if you think about some of our markets, maybe in aggregate, but in some of our markets, we're not the biggest player in town, and it's not our focus anywhere. Even markets where we are, our focus is doing the best job for the people who hire us to work for them that we possibly can. We don't always get it right, but we've got a group and a culture of people that's what they care about. And so sometimes, resolving issues is more important than getting it stellar every time, is how you respond to that consumer. I agree with Paul. The 3 things that matter are still the same 3 things that mattered when Bill and Steve Abbott started the company that I went to work for 23 years ago. They care about the relationship, they care about the revenue that you produce, gross and net, and they care about a good, well-maintained property, their asset. They want to make sure those things. You can jumble them around in different orders for different types of owners. We've got some investor owners that just send me the check. They've never even been here. You got others that don't care about the check, but they want to know that Mr. Kaiser is going to be there and checking out that unit before they arrive. You got some people that just want to make sure that their investment is really, really carefully maintained and managed. But I'll tell you one of the things we don't do is that we don't chase management fees down a rabbit hole. We feel like we're worth what we charge to operate our business. And I can't tell you the number of people that we get from owners that send us the postcards and the emails and the goodies and trinkets that they get from numerous companies every single week. I've got stacks of stuff, on my desk. And some of the offers that you read, you're like, you gotta be kidding me. This isn't sustainable as a business. You can tell who's in it for a short period and who's in it for a long haul. So if you want to compete with us, just charge a low management fee, because we'll let the owner go. And then when you look at the business development stats, we pull 550, 600 properties, a year from those very same companies that either aren't around anymore or they didn't do what they said they were going to do. We want to be a company that does what we say we're going to do.
I hate to get sidetracked on that really quickly though, but some of the companies that are funded right now are able to offer lower commission rates right now. Are you losing any owners to some of these new companies that are heavily funded right now?
Yeah, we lose units, and some of those that you're talking about that have got, they're going out there with big strong guarantees, and they're going out there with many other. And what we do is when an owner comes in and says, look, we really want to try to get this offer, whatever, we say, we know we really appreciated your business and know we cannot match that offer, but hey, if we can ever be of service again, please just give us a call back. I've pulled as many units back from companies without those guarantees that I've lost. So, you know, ultimately a company's life cycle that they're in, some are in a big hurry to grow. I get it. You know, we were too. Back in 1997 through about 2002, we were up to 38,000 properties in 35, you know, locations, destinations, all through big hurried acquisitions. And guess what? There's a hell of a lot of headaches that come with all that too, and it's a lot less profitable in some markets than you really think at first. So there's a lot of growing pains that come along with that type of trajectory. And so I sit back and I look at the funds being raised, I look at the money being spent, and I go, man, that was nice when it lasted for us too. And then, you know, at some point you got to start making a profit and paying some bills.
A lot of, with Newman Daily and with Monterey, I mean, both of yours are very hands-on in terms of boutique kind of service, is I think how we're known. We used to study Newman Daily and all the customer care and your marketing materials and things like that. So how does a small company compete today?
You know, so I don't think anybody up here has been beat. All right. I mean, I think to your point, there's a lot of folks that muddy up the water in the industry, but being beat intimates that there's some finality to the game or the relationship, and I don't think there's anybody out there that can fundamentally beat us all day, every day. I think pulling a property over for a year, 18 months, 6 months, whatever it may be, is generally what happens. My my mother-in-law, everything great about Newman Daily is because of my mother-in-law, because she is focused in on creating a professional, quality-driven business. I mean, to a lot of what Lino said, if you want a lower management commission, she'll tell you where you need to go to get it, right? I mean, she believes she's worth it. In Monterey County, we have a different program where we have a really high-touch level of service. We do really well out there. We lost a property to one of those folks a couple months ago, and it really hurt our staff to lose that owner. We did really well for that owner, and they offered a guarantee, and they offered a guarantee on a house that is going to get ripped apart. Right? I mean, this is a high-end house in Carmel, California, and we did our best to say, hey, listen, here's what we think, but you know, look, if there's anything we can do to help you, we'll let you go. But man, it didn't hurt me any less. I'm still struggling with it. But you know, to Lino's point and some of the other guys, we keep playing our game. We do what we know how to do and have done for the last 20 years or so. There's going to be people that come in and you know, still playing the game, offer a gimmick or what have you, and at some point they're going to have to start making a profit and doing things like the rest of us.
Steve, we've talked a lot about touchy-feely service, and you've talked about that maybe that's not necessary going forward. Do you think that at your size right now, that service, how are you maintaining a high level of service at your size right now?
I mean, look, we're in 19 markets. I think every single market is different. Every single market has a different level of service. Every single market has a different level of commission structures, staffing, touch points. What we've tried hard to do is to create a hub and spoke model where at the hub we centralize functions you would think, right? So if you were out acquiring companies and you decided that was really what you wanted to do, and it's not for the faint of heart, but you would centralize the accounting, you would centralize the marketing, you'd centralize the IT, you might centralize a portion of the call center, and you would get savings that way. But then the other thing you would do is you would leave at the local level, if you were smart, which is the way we're doing it, you would leave those kind of operational people. You would leave the people that are handling the guest check-in, handling the service, handling the owner relations. You would have maybe the beginning of reservations originate in the local area, and then if they were busy, it would roll over to your centralized service. That's what you would do. And then what you would also do, if you were in a position where you had resources, is you would take tools like Be Home 247, smart locks, and other initiatives like owner portals and things like that, and you would mobilize it out, and you would standardize rates so that rates could easily be updated, and you could do yield management on a case by case. So you would do standardization. Now, there would be a portion of owners who would probably say, hey, we've lost something. And they may not like that type of culture. And they may decide that they'll go with a smaller firm who is creating a more of a clubhouse relationship. But from our standpoint, what we gain is we gain owners who are more, I kind of like them. They are less involved in the property. They look at it from a rental income standpoint. I know some of you probably don't want those owners, but we like the ones that it is an investment. They more or less leave you alone. They hold you accountable for income and the condition of the properties, and they're not micromanaging you. So, you know, in every organization, there's a culture, right? So our culture is going to be less touchy-feely, but we believe we provide more services, and we also provide marketing. In some cases, some markets, that marketing is really important. So where it really gets tested, and it's really interesting, is when there's a natural disaster. So it kind of separates the companies that are really, really strong at marketing from the companies that aren't, because there's nothing that disrupts a market like a natural disaster. And so in Gatlinburg, we had these terrible wildfires, and they were devastating. They burned up 20% of the inventory. People were scared to come. They thought people, you know, all this whole area was burned. Now they saved the town, and they saved, you know, most of the area was not really hit by the burn zone, but it really repressed traffic. And it was brutal, right? So we had to put money back into that market, but we did. And today we're way ahead of the pace from a year ago and even 2 years ago, because we were able to put in the marketing, and we had the third-party channels, and we had the things, and it came into play then. So we didn't need it. So you could go along and say, well, I don't need all these things. But what a natural disaster will test you, and you know, this area has been prone to those.
We've had a couple. So I just had a text question. I didn't realize that we're live streaming, so I just gave my number to the world. So what I'm really getting are more comments than questions.
Tony's going to be calling you.
Oh, for sure. Hey, Tony Kennan. So VRBO or Airbnb, who wins?
Neither.
Oh, interesting.
So, you know, I'm lucky enough where I'm starting to write some articles on the future of the space. And my prediction are there's really going to emerge 5 different winners from this space. One is Google, one is Amazon, one is Booking.com, owned by Priceline, one is Expedia Corporation. I know that I'm hedging because Expedia owns HomeAway, but Expedia Corporation. And the 5th is property managers. So again, whether the OTAs want to admit it or not, there's less supply, there's more demand. The demand keeps growing every single year. And it's the companies that give us value that'll win. So Expedia, with their packaging and with their experiences or wallets, you'll start to see white labeling where they'll take our inventory and they'll brand it. Same thing with Booking.com. So I don't see Airbnb and VRBO emerging. And you know, Airbnb, I think they believe that they can grow this business organically. That was just, you know, I don't know if you guys saw the news, right? Big, huge news. The CFO of Airbnb just left, or was asked to leave, or lost a power struggle, LT. And they also announced they're not going public. And Brian Chesky, according to what I read, said, we're going to try to grow the company organically. Well, that's a tall order, in my opinion, when supply is scarce. How do we know it's scarce? We know it's scarce because this is the only segment of travel that I know where the OTA can charge the guest a guest traveler fee. We know the supply is scarce. So if the supply is scarce, how much more organic growth is there? How much are you fighting over the same amount of growth? So I think those models are flawed for two reasons. One, Airbnb doesn't value professional property managers. They've made that abundantly clear. And HomeAway, through their own actions recently, has showed they don't value professional property managers. So it's the companies that are going to come in and they understand sustainable relationships. Google's expert. I mean, there's no company that's better than Google at building sustainable relations. Now, you may not like, the price that you have to pay on certain keywords, but you're not blaming Google. That's market driven. They're a great partner. And Expedia is going to be a great partner as they start to come in. Same thing with Booking.com, and Amazon's a completely another subject. But you will see Amazon start to come in from an operational way in ways that you can't even imagine with things like Alexa and Prime. And then us, professional property managers, we're going to win because they need our supply.
Ben, you have a broad view of this industry. I mean, you travel quite a bit, you're dealing with a lot of acquisitions. And of course, you served as the VRMintel president for some time. I don't even know how long it was. Oh, wow, 3 years. Looking forward, what do you predict could be disruptive coming up in the industry? Do you have any thoughts on where the space is headed that we may not be able to see yet, changes that may be coming our way?
I would agree with everybody here that we're poised for, there's a tremendous opportunity. And I'll tell folks that there's a wave coming, right? You can either ride that wave or you can get crushed by it. And I think for a lot of us here, this is yet another wake-up call that we need to start running our businesses differently. A lot of us here have become fat and happy. I started telling the story 10 years ago about how 20 years ago you'd put a couple ads in the Southern Living magazine, you'd put your feet up on the desk, and then the calls came in, right? And then 10 years ago it was HomeAway, VRBO. Folks, now we're in a position where you really need to have a diversified marketing program. You need to make a meaningful profit in your business. You need to focus on efficient operations. There's a myriad of things that you've got to get really good at now if you're going to survive in the new world order. Because everybody out there is trying to take a bite out of it. If it's not another distribution channel, it's another shiny new object that you have to have in your business that gets invented tomorrow. And if you're going to continue to perpetuate your business, you've got to focus in on running that business. So I think the opportunity is there for us, but I think we've got to really step up our game in order to capitalize on it.
Lino, what keeps you up at night? What are the challenges you're facing? Really?
In the vacation.
In the vacation really.
Okay, so back. Holy mackerel. That could have gone south quick. When you think of it, we are a company that I think is not shy to change. It actually excites me. I love to not be complacent and always challenge, what's next. I think our industry is one, the closer you are to the product and the consumer, really the safest spot you're in. And the reason I say that is these units, no matter how the guest gets here, they're going to need to be cleaned. They're going to need to be maintained. They're going to need to be dealt with if there's an issue. So if you're a great local operator, I think you're in a pretty safe spot if you operate your business in the right way. What is the right way? Well, that's up to you. I can't foresee what your business is really modeled to do or where you're going to end up. That's really a very personal, initiative. But I feel like what keeps me up at night more than anything else is to make sure that we aren't getting complacent as a company. We're going live actually tomorrow on V12. We have been on the same property management software since, I don't know, 80s, mid-80s, maybe 83, 84, an AS400 platform. And we have a very large intern program. We have usually 35 to 40 different schools represented, 50, 60 interns that come in. And on their evaluations of our intern program, they're they were blown away. They didn't even know a single color screen was still in existence. Most of these kids, they were born into mice and multicolor screens and everything else. So what keeps me up at night is making sure that we are not getting complacent in how we look at our business, and that's been our biggest hurdle, is on the technology side for my region specifically. But I wake up every day excited about the industry. Maybe call me a little bit crazy, but this is one cool thing to do for a living. We get up and greet people from all over the world. We get to take a group of people who do much different things, whether you're housekeeping or maintenance or guest services or management, and you get to weave all those beautiful people into an experience for others. And that's not easy to do, but it's exciting. So those are the things that keep me up.
Well, speaking of tech, we've talked about this a little bit. You've implemented some new things. Do you have any, can you share a little bit with what you've done?
Sure. The tech side moves really fast, and everybody's got the next best thing. And you have to kind of work really hard about vetting those things and really take your time and not jump too fast into too many things. And, like Lino said, they're changing to a new PMS, V12, property management system. I've changed to Springer Miller maybe 3 different times from different systems. And going through that change is not fun. It is what you'll go through tomorrow and is no fun. Because it's so hard to change those property management systems. But we're always looking for advancements on the technology side. We've got Lexicon in the room who we're working with as an aggregator, and they do a really good job. We're confident they're going to do a really good job, or I'll point them out because they're sitting at that table right there, or else. And but we're also we're changing our booking engine. We're going from Synetics, and I hope Synetics is not in the room, but to a company called Fuel Travel. We're working with a company called Flip2, which on the social side is doing some powerful stuff fast. So, but tech moves so fast, and you've got to be on top of it. And that keeps me up at night because we're always looking for the next best system, the next best way to do things. And a lot of that's driven by our consumers. Glad to have you was so good. It's such a cool system that, great way to talk to your guests. Now Zingle's doing it, and now Fuel's going to. A lot of people are doing that, and they're right behind Jason with new technology. So it's just a matter of keeping up and making sure you vet those processes deeply and take your time doing it. And that's how I think we've gotten to where we are.
Yeah, Jason, same question to you. You obviously, besides data, in case you don't know, Jason and I partnered on the data platform. Which Rob Johnson, are you in here? Maybe not. Dan? He's at the bar. Likely. So you can find out more about data in Latitude 38. That's the name of the bar here. But tech, and you can talk about data, but what else are you working on right now that's kind of exciting on your end?
Actually had me sign an NDA this morning, so I'm not at liberty to say no. I feel like our space as a whole doesn't do a good enough job sometimes looking outside of our space. There's some incredible tech that touches the hospitality space, and vacation rental is I think the hardest aspect of hospitality to really have tech work well in. A couple of years ago, we went to all the hotel shows, the big high tech shows where you'd go in and you'd see acres and acres of software that would just blow you away. You'd sit in panels, and it feels like still they were, I won't say decades, but they were years ahead of us in terms of sophistication and the tools that they use to run their businesses. So we were anxious to take all those tools and bring them home, and we were going to be, the fastest and the slickest. And what we immediately found out is their tools aren't sophisticated enough for the vacation rental space. You have to kind of have homegrown tools. But we try hard to keep our eyes up anyway. We did probably our biggest move this year was we went heavily into Salesforce. We really are trying to avoid that data silo where you really can't get all your data talking to each other. It seems like we had so many different systems, and we were spending so much energy trying to get our data in one spot, and then we weren't able to spend that time that we needed to do to take it from there to the next level. And so we really tried to invest in a system where we could have everything in one place so that the rest of our energy could be spent figuring out how to do better marketing and better communications with our guests and just better at our overall branding. So Salesforce was probably our biggest thing. obviously, we have quit our day job to join Amy on the data side. Much like, when we saw what was happening with Glad and wanted to jump back into space. We've been on the sidelines now for a while, and Amy and Rob came and did a demo to Ashley and I. And we realized, going back to that same communication with the hotels, like they live and breathe on data analytics. We talked about some of it this afternoon in the revenue meeting, but if you look at what they're running their businesses off of, and you look at what we're running our businesses off of, it's an embarrassing distinction. And so I think being able to spend more time analyzing our data and less time pulling our data can change the game for all of us. Obviously, we spent a lot of time trying to roll that out. And then in the room, we're rolling out Breezeway to try to see, again, on the data side, our goals, I guess, this year sum up are better visibility into our data, less time pulling it, more time using it.
You guys have any questions? I think we're actually out of time.
I can add one disruption.
Oh gosh. More disruption from Steve Milo.
So this really is going to be pretty powerful, and that's voice. So voice is something, I know that there's always something new. One time it was Google Glasses, that didn't work. Voice is going to be for real. So the thing about voice is, when you do voice, or you do what's called, automated butler, which Alexa or Google Home has one, it's going to give you limited choices. So the key for all of us in here, as we're working on our databases and we're working on our properties, is make sure you spend the time on setting up your database. Make sure you line up all the attributes that should be associated with your property. I know that some of you, this is obvious. Some of you, I've bought your companies before. They were not paying attention to your database, believe me. So anyone who tells me, every hand that says we have our database cleaned up, 2/3 of the companies we purchased, the database was a mess. So those attribute fields are really critically important. The other thing is your copy. Make certain your copy is more than just a generic paragraph. We've bought companies where every condo had the same cookie cutter, cut and paste in there. That's not going to work. The way that things are going to happen also is when these OTAs like Booking.com or Expedia Corp start bringing stuff in, they're not going to use your headline. We've heard this, I've talked about how they're going to go more for a generic listing. It's not generic listing because they necessarily want to take the name of your property out, but although that's some of it. But it's also they're going to try to optimize your listing in the way they think their consumer wants to see it. In different channels, the consumer has different conversions, and they also have languages. So they're going to take the data you have and pull it out and decipher it and push it out. The better your data is, the better that you've invested in copy, the better that you've invested in photo, the better that you've gone through the data, your database, and made sure every single attribute, whether you have a grill, whether it's pet friendly, whether there's a Keurig coffee machine, whatever, every single thing that you do in that database is going to make a difference. And that's how you're going to be able to take advantage of this technology in a way that won't be overwhelming. But do look for voice.
Since we are out of time, thank you. It's legit true, and we're seeing so much of it. In fact, I think there's a big presentation on it at the VRMintel Europe conference this year too. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you guys being here. It means a lot to me, and this is a superstar panel, and just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
So.